What's up, YouTube fam? It's your girl, Mrs. Tony 2 times, and I'm back with another video. In today's video, I'll be discussing the tragic story of Emani Moss, a 10-year-old who lost her life back in 2013 due to neglect and starvation. Her father and stepmother were convicted of her slaying. Before we get into this video, welcome if you're new here to our channel. Please feel free to subscribe. Click that notification bell to get notified every time we upload. If you're rocking with the content, smash that like button. Share this video with everyone you know. Make sure you watch until the end to hear the full story. Just a quick disclaimer that details in this story can be very disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. All right, let's jump right into it. Emani Gabrielle Moss was born on April 23, 2003. Emani was one of 5 children born to her mother. Shortly after Emani's birth, her mother, who suffered from substance abuse, surrendered her parental rights to all of her children, and Emani's father, Emani Moss, gained sole custody of her. Emani's biological mother would have nothing to do with her. Sadly, Emani's tumultuous beginnings didn't stop there. Emani's father, Eman, was charged with and convicted of battery and second-degree child cruelty in 2004 when Emani was just a baby. He was accused of beating Emani's biological mother in front of her. According to reports, despite that conviction, Emani's dad was the one to raise her and reportedly kept her active at church. In 2009, Eman would marry preschool teacher Tiffany Moss. Eman and Tiffany Moss would go on to have 2 children of their own, a boy and girl. You would think that Eman had built a family, providing a structured and loving environment for Emani, but no, that was not the case. Emani lived a life of neglect and mistreatment at the hands of what some would call an evil stepmother. Despite her action towards her stepdaughter, there were no records indicating that Tiffany mistreated her own biological children. According to records, Tiffany's mistreatment of Emani increased in March of 2010 after a school nurse found visible scabs, bruises, and welts on Emani, which caused Tiffany Moss to lose her job as a preschool teacher. Emani, then age 6, told the school nurse that she was afraid of going home with a bad report card because she was worried her parents would hurt her. According to reports, little Emani told the nurse that her stepmother had spanked her with a curtain rod. Emani ended up being taken to the police headquarters. According to reports, her stepmother Tiffany confessed to striking Emani with a belt over homework. Tiffany was arrested and charged. She was later sentenced to 5 years of probation as a part of a first offenders program. The Division of Family and Children's Services, DFACS, signed the plea deal. After the March 2010 incident, Emani was taken from her father and stepmother's home and placed with her grandmother. Emani stayed with her grandmother for about 6 months. During this time, Emani's school performance improved and her future started to look bright, but things would take a terrible turn once again. According to reports, the Division of Family and Children's Services dismissed the case against Tiffany and Eman after they completed parenting classes. Eman fought for custody of Emani, and in fall of 2010, he won. Emani returned home with her father and stepmother. According to records, Emani's grandmother fought to retain custody of her granddaughter. She suspected Emani was still being mistreated. However, she had a hard time persuading those in charge of the case to let her keep custody of Emani. According to reports, when Emani went back to live with her father and stepmother, her stepmother Tiffany Moss reportedly continued to do terrible things to Emani for the next several years. Emani would later make several attempts to escape her stepmother's wrath. In July of 2012, Emani tried to run away from home on more than one occasion. In one case, she went to the apartment office where they lived and told them she wanted to run away because her stepmother had tied her up with a belt and placed her in a cold shower. According to reports, law enforcement responded and were told by Tiffany that Emani was not telling the truth. According to reports, no one was charged because there was not enough evidence. That resulted in Emani being returned to the Moss household. According to records, when Emani ran away again, a police officer found her sleeping in the bushes of a nearby apartment complex. According to records, Emani told the officer that she had run away because her stepmother was mean to her. The officer reported the incident to the Division of Family and Children's Services, and reports say they also filed runaway and curfew violation charges against Emani to ensure she would see a juvenile court judge. It was really clear that nothing had changed for Emani, and it was her word against her stepmother's. It was reported that from 2011 to the summer of 2013, the Moss family moved around quite a bit, sometimes even living with family members. However, when the Mosses lived on their own, Emani rarely saw extended family. According to records, Emani's father worked long hours and barely saw her. He would mostly see his children on the weekends when he was in charge of caring for them, reporting that he would see Emani eat a lot while in his care. With all of Emani's complaints about her stepmother and her attempts to run away, was her father just unaware of the mistreatment and neglect Emani suffered at the hands of his wife Tiffany? Did Iman ignore the signs of what was going on because he was complicit? It's very hard to believe that this man was not aware of what was going on in his own home. In May of 2013, the Mosses decided to go visit Iman's sister's house for Mother's Day. Emani's aunt and grandmother noticed that her hair had been cut. According to reports, when Emani's grandmother confronted Tiffany about it, she reportedly said, "If you act ugly, you should look ugly." Emani's aunt also noticed that Emani acted more timidly than usual. Iman's sister and mother knew something was off. According to reports, after the 2012 and 2013 school year ended, Iman and Tiffany announced that they would be pulling Emani out of school and homeschool her instead. Emani's aunt objected to the idea and called DFACS, asking them to intervene. Her concerns seemed to have fallen on deaf ears as they declined to intervene. Emani had now been completely isolated from any contact with anyone on the outside. Mother's Day 2013 was the last time any members of Emani's family, besides her father, stepmother, and siblings, saw her alive. According to records, on August 6, 2013, DFACS received an anonymous tip that Emani was being neglected by her father and stepmother and appeared to be thin. However, that tip was reportedly never followed up on due to an address change and the inability to determine if there was any actual maltreatment. Again, concerns for Emani's safety and well-being seemed to fall on deaf ears. According to reports, in the late summer of 2013, Iman, Tiffany, their young children, and 10-year-old Emani moved to an apartment in Lawrenceville, Georgia. According to records, during this time, Iman worked 2 jobs. He would leave his first job in the early morning, briefly returning in the late afternoon, and then leaving for his second job around 6 p.m., before finally returning around 10:30 p.m. or 11 p.m. While Iman was at work, Tiffany was left to care for the children. Things would take an even more dark and sinister turn in the Moss home. According to reports, at some point, Tiffany began to deprive Emani of food. According to records, the antics likely lasted for several weeks. According to reports, records say that during that time, Emani was confined to her bedroom. Neighbors reportedly only saw Tiffany and Iman's 2 younger children and had no knowledge about their older sister. Records say that Emani eventually became too weak to move and could not leave her bed or use the bathroom. As Emani endured horrendous suffering, her stepmother Tiffany took care of and fed her own 2 biological children. On several occasions, it was reported that Tiffany would send her husband pictures of meals she had prepared for her children. In another instant, she asked him to bring home cookie dough so she could bake cookies. The pure evil that has to live inside of a person like that is hard to comprehend. There was no intervention as Emani's condition continued to decline. According to reports, in the early evening of October 24, 2013, Emani suffered what her father believed was a seizure. Court records indicate that when Iman came home, his wife Tiffany told him something was wrong with Emani. Records continue on to say that when he went into his daughter's bathroom, he found her in the bathtub shaking. Emani was reportedly unresponsive and her eyes were rolling back and forth. Iman revealed that he moved Emani to her bed, where she stayed for the next couple of days. He said he visited her during this time and tried to feed her, but he was unsuccessful. Despite her declining condition, he still chose not to get his daughter medical attention. Sadly, reports say on October 28, 2013, Tiffany Moss called Iman at work to tell him that Emani had passed away. Iman would later testify at trial that when he came home from work, the family seemed normal, with the children playing and his wife watching television. According to reports, Iman would find his daughter lying on a blanket on her bedroom floor. He reportedly told his wife they should call the authorities. However, records say Tiffany insisted they couldn't do that because she would lose her 2 children. According to reports, Tiffany told her husband they needed to hide Emani's body and said the words, "Be on our criminal mind." Tragically, Iman would comply with his wife's sick and sinister plan. Records say Iman wrapped Emani's body with blankets and moved her to another room in the apartment. Documents revealed the couple kept Emani's body in their apartment for several days, and their lives basically went back to normal. According to court records, Iman said that he would go to work and spend time at home with Emani's body grieving. According to reports, the Moss couple agreed to cover up Emani's heinous passing. Reports reveal the day after Emani left this earth, Tiffany went to Anna's Linens and bought new bed linens. Reports say Tiffany had suggested to her husband that they bury Emani and report her as a runaway. According to records, Iman went to a local department store and bought a galvanized trash can, trash bags, charcoal, and lighter fluid. Days later, on Halloween 2013, documents say Tiffany and Iman decided to put Emani's body in the trash can and set it ablaze. Reports reveal that when they tried to place her in the trash can, it was difficult because of the stage of decomposition the body was in. They reportedly used duct tape to aid in the disposal. Iman then covered her with a comforter. According to reports, the couple then placed Imani's body in the trash bag. As the sun rose in the early morning hours of November 1st, 2013, the Moss couple reportedly put the trash can containing Emani in the back of their car. They also took their children with them and headed to find a place to finish what they had started. According to reports, Iman and Tiffany found a secluded location and removed the trash can from the vehicle. Reports say they added charcoal briquettes to the bottom of the can, poured a lighter fluid, and set it on fire. As the couple watched the flames burn, they realized it would not burn to ash. According to reports, after about 5 minutes, the couple decided to extinguish the fire and loaded the trash can back in the car and took Emani back to the apartment. According to documents, the day after the couple attempted to get rid of Emani's body, Iman reportedly went to work with his daughter's remains still in the back of his car. Reports say he later confessed to a friend about what happened to Emani. The friend urged him to call the police. Reports reveal that Iman thought about what his friend said, and after coming home from his second job, he decided to finally contact officials. According to reports, at 4 a.m., he made the call, telling the dispatcher he was thinking about taking his life. When Iman told his wife about his call to the police, Tiffany reportedly placed the trash can with Imani's remains in a grassy area in the apartment complex and fled in their car with their children. When police arrived at the apartment, they were told by Iman that Emani had drunk some chemicals and passed away. Reports say he claimed to officers that he had panicked and put her body in a trash can outside the apartment and tried to cremate it. After searching for Emani's remains, officers found the trash can. However, they did not believe Iman's story. Officers quickly identified him and his wife as suspects in Emani's tragic end. Officials wasted no time in arresting Iman and were on the search for Tiffany. After some time on the run, eventually Tiffany dropped her 2 children off at her mother's house and decided to turn herself in. Her husband and Emani's father, Iman, ultimately confessed to covering up Emani's slaying by reporting her as a runaway and attempting to dispose of her by setting it on fire. Emani's tragic slaying led to major criticism of Georgia's child welfare system, which caused significant changes to take place. In January 2015, a report was released with recommendations on ways to improve Georgia's child welfare system. In that same year, Emani Moss pled guilty. he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In exchange for the plea, he agreed to testify against his wife, Tiffany. Tiffany was also offered a plea deal that would have allowed her to be sentenced to life in prison. However, she rejected the deal, and the case was scheduled to go to trial. According to reports, in 2018, Emani's grandmother filed a lawsuit against DFACS and the Department of Human Services. According to the lawsuit, there were multiple occasions where the department could have investigated the Moss household and intervened on behalf of Emani. Tiffany's trial began on April 15, 2019. According to reports, Tiffany Moss decided to represent herself, but still had her defense lawyers serve as standby attorneys to answer any legal questions. Records say that during the pretrial hearings and jury selection, the judge urged Tiffany to rely on her standby attorneys, but she refused. Tiffany Moss also did not give an opening statement, nor did she cross-examine any witnesses or give a closing argument. When the court asked why Tiffany wanted to represent herself, she never gave a direct answer. She just said she was putting her faith in God's hands. The prosecutors, however, called 18 witnesses, including Emani's aunt, grandmother, and fourth-grade teacher. They also called Emani Moss and the medical examiner who performed an autopsy on Emani's body. At Tiffany's trial, prosecutors pointed out that Emani would have smelled cookies baking in the oven as she laid in her room with an empty stomach. According to the medical examiner who testified at trial, the process of not eating until you lose your life would have been painful. According to reports, when Emani passed away, she was severely underweight, with the medical examiner describing her as more or less skin and bones. Court records state that Emani weighed only 32 pounds, the weight of an average 3-year-old at the time of her passing. Emani was 10. The details in Emani's case were gut-wrenching and absolutely heartbreaking, to say the least. The trial would last 2 weeks before the jury found Tiffany Moss guilty. On April 29, 2019, Tiffany Moss was convicted on all 6 counts in connection with Emani Moss's mistreatment and ultimate passing. According to reports, the jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. During the sentencing phase, Tiffany once again declined to address the jury and refused to make any type of statement. In the state's closing argument, the prosecutor urged that Tiffany should not be given the opportunity to be released because she would never change. After closing arguments, the jury began deliberating on whether or not Tiffany should be sentenced to death. According to reports, after the first day of deliberations, jurors appeared conflicted and were told by the judge to go home and sleep on it. They returned the next day, and after deliberating, they ultimately agreed that Tiffany should receive the ultimate sentence. On May 1, 2019, the judge agreed with the jury's recommendation and sentenced Tiffany, then age 36, for her life to be taken by lethal injection. According to records, Tiffany's execution was scheduled for between June 7th and 14th, but it did not occur during the time frame due to the appeals process. Tiffany Moss is currently incarcerated at Arundel State Prison and is Georgia's only female death row inmate. If Tiffany is eventually executed, she will be the third woman in Georgia to be executed since 1945. As for Emani's father, Eman, he is currently incarcerated at the Smith State Prison in Glenville, Georgia. During Tiffany's appeal, she did accept legal representation, unlike what she did during her initial trial. Soon after she was sentenced, a motion was filed asking for a new trial, arguing, among other things, that Tiffany was not competent to act as her own attorney. According to what her attorneys said in reports, Tiffany Moss has neuropsychological testing data that show the defendant to have damage to parts of her brain. I was only able to read about status hearings on Tiffany's appeal since the motion was filed. According to reports, Eman and Tiffany Moss remained married and lost custody of their 2 children. The children were sent to live with foster parents, according to news reports. In 2019, the prosecutor on the case told local news outlets that the children were adopted by their foster parents. According to reports, the couple's son, who was only 3 years old when Emani lost her life, reportedly did have some memories of the incident. However, according to the prosecutor, at the time of an interview in April 2019, the 2 children were doing great and may never know what happened. Wow, fam, what a sad and tragic story. May Emani Moss continue to rest peacefully. This story was the hardest to get through. It just made me so sick to my stomach. I couldn't fathom how this woman could be so evil, cold, and unremorseful. At the time of this recording, Tiffany Moss still remains on death row. I am usually opposed to such punishment, but in this case, it's hard to feel like it's not deserved. In her appeal, her defense is claiming that she has brain damage and may not have been suitable to represent herself. However, in my opinion, based on the facts presented in the case and trial, Tiffany Moss was well aware of her actions and was competent enough to choose to represent herself. She participated in jury selection and answered questions in court politely with a smile on her face, according to records. And surprisingly, after her conviction and sentencing, she then decides to obtain legal counsel during her appeal. I may be wrong, but I believe she's fully well aware of the magnitude of her devious deeds. However, in my opinion, she just doesn't care and just wants her sentence reduced. She's just evil. And don't even get me started on Emani's father. What a coward and sorry excuse for a man to let that happen to your baby girl. Not only let it happen, but participated in the heinous events. May God have mercy on them. Again, my condolences and prayers to Emani's surviving family members. Fam, tell me your thoughts on this tragic story down in the comments below. All right, fam, that's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is your girl, Mrs. Tony 2 Times, and I'm out.